right? I caulked the whole house. I spent the whole day. My knees are on fire. My hands are cramped. I've exerted a lot of effort, but I don't really necessarily have anything to show for it. It looks just like it did this morning. The only difference is, obviously, when the rains come in, then I can say that it prevented it from leaking into the house to some extent. And even then, I won't be able to sort of have a recognition. I understand and I hope and I make an assessment that I guess it's doing its job, right? The reason that the house wasn't flooded was because I went and caulked the whole house and the baseboards, right? That's just an example. It might not be the greatest example, but you get the idea, right? The example is that I've exerted a lot of effort, right? And I've received very, very little benefit. And I'm going to be least likely to participate in actions where there is very high effort but very low benefit. And then the last one is where there's very high effort but also a very high benefit, right? There's a lot of effort that's involved, but the benefit, the payoff for that effort is equally high, right? It's very high. And the example for this, and there's tons of examples that you can use, but the example that I chose to use for this is going green. Right? Going green is a perfect example, right? There's a lot of effort in making sure that you recycle your plastics and your glassware, that you recycle your aluminum and so on. There's a lot of effort in motivating an individual to go spend their money to go buy a Prius, right, and not a Mercedes-Benz or like a Hummer or something, right? Why would I want to go on and buy that crazy-looking Prius? Well, if you buy that Prius, you're going to be contributing less carbon emissions into the environment. If you recycle that glassware, if you recycle those aluminum cans, you're going to prevent waste buildup. All of these have a huge benefit, right? Because with the reduction of carbon emissions, with the preservation of our land space for other things other than waste and wasteful, there's a huge benefit. And it's not just a benefit for any one individual, it's a benefit collectively for the entire world. But we know how hard it is to fully go green, right? Going green is not something, it's a lifestyle, it's not like a fad, right? You have to really live it, and it's more difficult, it's easier said than done. The point of this being that now we can see all of the different combinations between the amount of effort that an individual can put in and what the individual gets out, right? I put a high amount of effort in, and what's the benefit, right? I put a low amount of effort in, and what's the benefit? And here are all the different formulations, and here is just sort of rudimentary examples of how this works. The whole point of this now, however, is to recognize the relationship between the problem with free riders and the prisoner's dilemma. And this is now where the lecture sort of integrated. You cannot think, right, or you should not think, argues social scientists, philosophers, economists, that individuals will naturally choose cooperation. As we saw in the last example on the prisoner's dilemma, it's usually the case that people aren't going to choose cooperation despite the fact that cooperation has the second best outcome, right? Where both parties cooperate, the outcome is the second best. People are going to, instead of cooperating, be motivated by self-interest and snitch the other person out. However, if I snitch the other person out, it's likely that they're going to snitch me out and we're both going to lose, right? We're both going to be punished for our action. Well, if that happens in a prisoner's dilemma, imagine magnifying that prisoner's dilemma now to 350 million people, right? If everyone's looking out for themselves, right? If everyone's looking out for themselves, I want to do something that's going to be relatively small effort and give me a high benefit. Well, this is going to be easy to do, right? That's going to be easy to do. It's going to be very, very hard to do either of these, right? And this is going to be more difficult than this. It'll be easier to motivate someone to do the last one than it would be to motivate someone to do this, because at least in the last one, the benefit's high. Now, to see how this works visually, right, sort of what the prisoner's dilemma and the problem with free riding looks like in the diagram is to think about the following. Think about this as in terms of a systems approach, right? A systems approach. And basically all a systems approach is, the best way to think of it is, think of like the dynamics of a car engine, right? There are many, many parts in the car engine that are working in sort of unison in order to get the transmission to start, in order to inject the fuel in, the spark plugs, and so on, right? There's a lot of things that are working simultaneously in unison in order to get your car to move from point A to point B. Similarly, if we're talking about the relationship between the prisoner's dilemma and this problem of free riding, the first thing that we have to recognize is that in free riding you have two types of participants, right? You have contributors and you have, so the first type is a contributor and the second type is a non-contributor. So you have two types of participants, right, in free riding. Those who contribute to the system, those who do not contribute to the system. It's going to be exactly the same relationship as we did with one person, right? On one end of the system is going to be effort. The byproduct of the system is going to be a benefit. So it's going to be win-win for everybody, right? It's going to be win-win, varying degrees of win. But the system's going to be a bit more complicated now because we're talking about an n of, I mean, the n can approach infinity, right? It doesn't matter how big your n is. So unlike drawing the system like this, where we're just talking about one person's sort of effort benefit, now we're going to be talking about collective effort benefit, factoring in all the possibilities, and the diagram is going to be a bit more complicated.